All right, Green Day albums tier list. Starting off with the debut, 39 Smooth. I'm going to put it in the C tier. It is definitely a debut punk album from some random punk band. Green Day definitely does show a lot of their strengths on this album. You can definitely already hear that their pop songwriting and their knack for melodies is totally here. There's some good hooks on the album. Not particularly memorable though, and there is some pretty shit production on this album. And on the next one, the guitar tone is that awful fucking shit punk guitar tone that I hate to hear whenever I hear it in punk music. It is a huge turn off for me. Very thin, not too great. Trey Cool was not their drummer yet, but the drumming isn't bad on this album. Really nothing is bad on this album aside from the production, I guess. It's, it's solid enough. It's solid enough. Going to Pasaliqua, as far as early Green Day songs go, might be the best one. Really, really like that song. But there are quite a number of tracks on here that, they're okay. It's absolutely an okay album. Nothing particularly super wrong with it. Just not really a standout record in the grand scheme of their career. Next up is Kerplunk, which I'm going to put in the B tier. So Kerplunk does have a lot of the same problems as 39 Smooth, but it makes up for it just with far better songwriting. There are a lot of really good songs in this album. I think when you compare it to 39 Smooth, it's just much more memorable overall. The original version of Welcome to Paradise always kind of throws me off because it's way worse than the re-recording, but a lot of the tracks on here are really, really strong. 2000 Light Years Away is kind of up there as one of the best Green Day tracks, honestly. There's a lot of really good songs. It's very much a test run for what I think they would do on Dookie, but it's really good for what it is. As far as the underground early Green Day albums go, this is the one to listen to for sure. Not something that you should listen to as one of your first Green Day albums, but a really good album nonetheless, and I do really enjoy it. Next up is Dookie, which is S tier. S tier. This is one of the absolute greatest albums of all time. This is one of my top 10 favorite albums of all time. This album just means so fucking much to me. It's unreal. But even getting aside from that, the sound, songwriting, flow, personality, lyrics, absolutely every aspect of this album is goddamn perfect. It is a brilliant record. I mean, the single power alone, anybody who isn't even that big of a fan of Green Day has to admit that this album's single power is almost unmatched. The sound of this album is so breezy and life-affirming. It just speaks to my soul. I don't even know how to put it. God, it's just song for song fucking amazing. Every single track on this album is an S-tier Green Day song. Every single one. And start to finish, amazing flow. It's just so breezy. The album goes by so quick. Amazing bass playing, incredible drumming, incredible production. I love the guitar tone. This, to me, is what I wish all punk music sounded like to me. I know it's pop punk, but goddamn, those catchy-ass melodies, fast tempos, fucking amazing drumming, quick drumming. God, it's perfect. It is absolutely perfect. It is the standard of punk music to me, which is not fair because most punk music isn't as good. Sorry to say. So anyway, next up is Insomniac, which gets A tier. Okay, Insomniac as the follow-up to Dookie, it definitely doesn't live up quite as much. I mean, it doesn't have the single power, though it still has single power. This album is angrier and darker and more frustrated than Dookie, but at the same time, it also does just sound a lot like Dookie, and there's really nothing wrong with that. There's a little bit more like straightforward alternative rock here on this album with tracks like Geek Stink Breath and stuff, and that shit's just awesome on here. Brain Stew, Jaded, so good. A lot of amazing tracks in this album. It's not necessarily as memorable as Dookie, but it just plays so good. It is such a fire album, start to finish, so enjoyable. And it still has a lot of my favorite Green Day songs on it. Panic Song is an underrated fucking gem. If you've never heard it, you should. It is one of the coolest Green Day songs ever. Really, really good album. And amazing album art as well. That gets the A tier. Nimrod, I'm going to put in the B tier. Nimrod is where the band started to get a little bit ambitious, and that goes over mostly well on Nimrod. There are a lot of songs that are quite different for them, different styles, different tempos, just generally not the straightforward pop punk that people probably came to expect from them. This is also the album with Time of Your Life on it. I mean, they definitely did a lot of different things on here, a lot of great singles on this album, and a lot of that stuff goes over great. My favorite track on this album is King for a Day. which has some gender bending lyrics I just really love. It's like a ska punk tune. It's fucking rad. There's a lot of rad songs all over this album. I think like listening to it front to back though is where it suffers a little bit. There are a lot of tracks on here, and not all of them are super memorable, or not all of them are as good as the other ones, but it's still a consistently very strong album. I mean, you know, on a good day, I could even put this in the low A, but I'm gonna leave it at a B for now. But seriously, sick album. And next up is Warning, which I'm gonna put in the C tier. I honestly don't know whether I like it more or less than 39 Smooth, but I'll put it there. Warning is a little bit of a miss, I think. It does have some great songs on it, like Minority and Warning and Waiting. It also has a lot of tracks that kinda suck, and a lot of tracks that are just okay. Is it ambitious? Sort of. It's certainly a risk, I'll say that. But I think when you look at Nimrod and how many ways it was able to creatively do different styles and different approaches to songwriting, Warning doesn't really have that going for it as much, because Warning is a little bit more uniform. Now, in a way, that makes Warning work, but it also means that whenever the songs don't stand out for being really all that interesting, like as like folk punk songs or whatever the hell else they go for here, it really starts to fall a little flat. It's not one of their best albums at all. It definitely makes sense that it wasn't a huge seller. Even with some big singles, it's really not too great. Next up is American Idiot, which gets A tier. Okay. American Idiot is a fucking great album. And once again, just like Dookie, the single power in this album is absolutely insane, and all of these singles are just so fucking good. But it's not even just the singles. The flow of the album front to back is fantastic. There's tons of great album cuts, and the concept is really, really good. There isn't much for me to criticize here. I actually even really like the production, as radio rock as it is. The album does sound great. And there are a lot of just like all-timer tracks in here. I mean, the fucking title track is so good. And I feel like the title track, maybe people think nowadays that it doesn't sound risky at all, and it sounds like the most like basic political track ever. But for the time, this was a super fucking bold song. I don't know how many people realize that. Like how much of a bold move it was for them, especially considering they were trying to get radio play again to write a song that was like this critical of the American political landscape and of Bush and shit. Like, while the song is kind of vague, that is ultimately what makes it work. It's a statement from people who were getting treated like shit in 2003 and 2004 America. And it is fucking awesome. And yeah, like, I mean, great balladry on this album. A lot of great songs, great concept. The story overall isn't necessarily really that much of a political story. It's really just about, honestly, another album about how suburbia kind of sucks. But yeah, fucking awesome. Just an awesome album. One of their most iconic, maybe their most iconic, actually. Probably is their most iconic album now. And just a sick album, so that gets in the A tier. Next up is 21st Century Breakdown, which gets C tier. C tier. I don't hate this album, and it does have its moments. I can at least appreciate that they're still trying to be ambitious, but I think that's actually kind of the album's downfall at a certain point. Maybe it would have been time to, of course, to like try something else and not just try to do something huge like American Idiot again. But unfortunately they did, and the songwriting has really started to take a bit of a nosedive. There are some crappy tracks on this album. The more straightforward pop punk kind of songs on here tend to suck ass. But some of the slower ballads, some of them can be very good. Some of them can be 21 Guns. It's iffy. This album is very iffy. It is all over the place for me. There are songs in here that I really like. There are songs in here that I really dislike. The story is garbage. It feels like they didn't even try. And like, it just feels almost like a rehash, but it's not doing anything that made American Idiot so exciting. There are some great tracks on here. East Jesus Nowhere I love the title track to this album. Peacemaker is awesome. There's some very good songs, but on the whole, this is an ill-conceived concept album. Not great, not good, not good. But I'll give it a C tier because, you know what, I can respect the effort, and I don't think it's a bad album. Unlike Uno, which gets F tier. This album is just fucking horrendous. I mean, Not a day goes by where I forget how fucking horrendous Uno by Green Day is. And it's really funny because I was saying with 21st Century Breakdown that maybe they should have course corrected and done something a little bit more back to basics, strip back the ambition a little bit. Well, they actually did that on Uno, and my god, it makes me wish they would just try to make rock operas again. This album is miserably bad. Like, for an attempt to recapture their old sound, it honestly just sounds like a parody. There are so many lazy ass songs in here. So many songs that easily should have been cut. If they weren't going to do a whole trilogy of albums, would have never ended up on any Green Day album because they just fucking suck. Like Troublemaker and shit. I can't think of anything positive to even say about this album. The production is terrible. The songwriting is terrible. The cover art is terrible. Fucking everything is goddamn terrible about Uno. And there's not a single song that I like on this album. Not a single thing that goes over well. Just a complete pile of garbage. Next up is Dose, which I'm gonna give... I'm gonna get... You know, this is a hard one. It's a D-. I'm gonna give it a D. This is tough, but... I think that... I'm gonna give it a D. I'm gonna give it an F. I don't care. The thing that was tough was that there are some tracks in this album that I do actually like. But at the end of the day, overall, this album sounds like fucking crap. This is some of their worst songs on it. This album has... Honestly, this album has lower lows than Uno does, for sure. Even after all this time, even after some other albums that came later, I still think Nightlife is the worst song Green Day ever made. And there are other examples in this album that are contenders, like Fuck Time. Terrible production. The garage rock thing they're trying to do is just so lame. Again, I almost want to put it in D because there are like a song or two or three that I do like here. But I can't justify it. This album is so bad. I can't justify putting it in D. Next up is Trey, which I will put in D. Trey is the best of the trilogy, in my opinion. It's also the most boring, but that's kind of why it's the best. The other two albums weren't boring. They were just terribly annoying and awful. At least this one is just a snooze fest. Again, there's a good track here or there on this record, but God, it has no interesting place in their discography. It's one of the most forgettable albums song for song. It just... At least Uno and Dos had some kind of idea behind their presentation and the sound they wanted to go for. Trey is just a bunch of boring songs. It's really not good. It's not that bad either, but it's really not good. I'm going to put it in the D tier. Next up is Revolution Radio, which I'm also going to have to put in the D tier. It's like, for me, this album, I just find it so disappointing to this day. It feels like it might have been their chance to recapture their former glory, but instead, they really, really flubbed it. The songs on here just aren't very good. Some of them just kind of suck. The production is okay. It feels like them trying to do American Idiot type songs again, these radio rock bangers, and they just fall flat. It does not have the fire that Green Day used to have in any way. Does not have any of that. It has a little bit of passion. I feel like they really tried on this album, and that's the only thing I can give it. But it's not very good. And finally, we have Father of All, which... I mean... Yeah. It's F. It is F. This is an F minus. This is an F minus minus. This album is absolutely god-awful, okay? Uno looks like a great album in comparison. This album is... I wish there was a lower tier than F for this album. It's a Z. It's so bad. It's so bad. Song for song, this is their worst set of songs easily. There is not a moment of this album that stands out among the rest as being kind of better. It is so bad. Terrible songwriting, fucking abysmal production, awful vocal performances, some of the stupidest songs they've ever written, completely out of touch. I have absolutely no idea what the hell they were thinking when they made this album. It makes me so sad. It makes me ashamed to be a Green Day fan. And then every single they've released since this is pretty much just as bad. And it makes me really, it's sad. I feel like it's over for this band. And that makes me sad. And this album depressed me, so that's why I'm giving it an absolute F. Such a bad album. Would I give it a 0? I would give it a 1, I think. But what's the difference at the end of the day? That's been my Green Day tier list. If you want to catch the music breakdown live, I stream it to my Twitch channel, casting_404, which you can find in the description. We stream the show every Wednesday at 6 p.m. MST. I hope to catch you live. This entire part you just saw was streamed live, and you can see it next time. Thanks for watching.